Welcome, everyone. It's so great to have you here for our monthly webinar on different topics in data and analytics. This month, we're talking about data strategy. It's something near and dear to the hearts of us here at Eckerson Group. We do a lot of data strategies for organizations, and we've come up with some secrets, but more importantly, we have some quote-unquote industry insiders here, people who run data and analytics teams at organizations like yours. And they're here to provide the inside scoop on how to create an effective data strategy. So let's move on and introduce you to our guest panelists today. We have Laura McCanleys, who's the CIO of International Finance Corporation, and Rana Glaskal, Vice Provost for Data and Analytics at Northeastern University. Welcome, Laura and Rana.
Thanks, Wayne.
Thank you.
It's so great to have you here. You both combine many, many years of experience in the data and analytics space, and we're eager to hear the lessons that you've learned and how to create the vision and execute on it. So just a quick look at the agenda for the next 50 to 60 minutes. We're just going to tackle 3 questions. First, what is a data strategy? Because believe it or not, there is misconceptions about this. Second, why do you need one? Because a lot of them, as you may know, probably collect dust on a shelf somewhere. But we here have a bias, and we think a data strategy is very important. And then finally, how do you implement a data strategy? A data strategy is conceptual. It's a document. And it really doesn't come to life until you start to act on it. So number 3 is the all-important question. Finally, I mentioned Eckerson Group has done a lot of work on data strategy, and we've actually written a lot about it. And now on our website, we have these things called topic pages. And those topic pages essentially consolidate a lot of the resources that we've created over the years on different topics. So we have one now on data strategy, and it's got about 18 related resources. And eventually it will include this webinar. Okay, so let's get to it. Our first question is, what is a data strategy? And because there is misconception out there about what this is, we're going to do a poll, see what you think. So Julie, why don't you put the poll down? And as I said, if you want to maximize your screen, you'll see all 6 answer choices on your screen, and we'll see the voting live, I think. Yes, it looks like it's live. So go ahead and answer. You have to put in your answer, I think you go over to the right-hand panel and click on the little chart icon, and that'll pull up the poll. And select your answer, and then you have to hit apply or send at the bottom. Okay, so the answers are coming in. 41 votes. Okay, looks like things have calmed down. And it looks like we've got, the winner is, no surprise, the above. We were debating about making this a trick question and not actually adding that one. And then vision, mission, and value statements came in second with 17%. So Laura, Ron, I want to turn this to you. Given what you've seen our audience thinks about a data strategy, do you agree?
Well, I do agree with all the above. That's really what it is. Yes, you usually set up vision and mission, but then you have to be able to have the plan how to execute and make it to life. So very important to really follow all of those.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think we have a very smart audience here. So
yeah, we do.
We couldn't fool them. I was actually surprised enterprise data architecture only got 1 vote because in my experience, and maybe it's because when I talk to architects or architecturally oriented CDOs, a data strategy is synonymous with a data architecture. And that's where they want to start and kind of finish a project if we get involved. It's like, okay, we need a data architecture, so we want you to help us. And we say, well, that's great, but really that architecture is as good as it might be. It's not going to get you where you want to go unless you have all these supporting things, like a really good operating model, and a really good governance and literacy strategy and a good self-service strategy. So sometimes it takes a little bit of time to communicate that thought to even senior leaders. So I'm surprised that didn't get more votes, but I guess we do have a very smart audience.
You've taught them well, Wayne.
Yeah.
Taught them well, right. So I'm going to present a few slides, and very conceptual what a strategy is. This is from one of the reports that's on that topic page that I mentioned earlier. So a data strategy is very comprehensive. It has basically four main areas. There's a strategy to the strategy, right? And really consists of road markers, right? Metrics, indicators that will help you understand where you want to go and if you're on the way to get there, right? And if you're on the right track or not. So that's vision, goals, metrics, use cases, risk plans, and then the all-important roadmap. And we'll show you some examples of that. The second thing is the program, otherwise known mostly as an operating model. What are the teams? What are the roles? What are the responsibilities? Not just on the enterprise data team, but also out there in the business. And then how do the people in the business doing data analytics relate to the people at the enterprise doing data analytics? And is there alignment? And in fact, that alignment is the key, I think, to a good data strategy. Because if you don't have everybody going in the same direction, especially the business units and the enterprise team, well, they're just pulling at different ends of a rope and you're never going to get anywhere. You're just going to get a lot of frustrated, demoralized people. So the operating model, I think, is really fundamental. And if I had to pick one of the components that was most important, it's that one. And I guess maybe I'm a little biased. That's what I tend to work on when I go into clients to do data strategies. Third one is operations. And this is kind of what most people spend most of their time on day to day on data teams and out in the business units. It's how do we architect this environment and how do we govern it? What are the tools that we're using? How do we build analysis up from the data? How do we support users doing data science? How do we improve self-service capabilities? That is the big goal these days. Everyone wants to empower the users because the users want that empowerment. And the IT or the data team want to make sure people get what they want. But it is really hard to deliver self-service, in my opinion. The final component is culture, which I think can be summarized in the word change management. You can have a great strategy, a great operating model, a great architecture with superb leading edge tools and wonderful data governance. But if your culture is not receptive to the changes, big or small, well, you're not going to get very far. You're not going to execute that strategy. So it's change management. What does that mean? It means sales. We got to do sales. We got to do marketing. We got to do training. We have certification programs. We need career pathing to make sure people both at the enterprise level and business units see a career for themselves in data analytics. So, the big picture are these four areas, I think, in the strategy. And last slide here, and then I'm going to open it up for more comments from Rana and Laura. I was fortunate to know Mike Mashendaro, now retired, but was head of BI at Dow Chemical. And he had a very enlightening comment to me, which was that he treated his program, his BI team and program, as a business. And the business plan was this data strategy. And the business plan, if you're starting any company, you need these things listed here. It's not that different from what you're doing with the data strategy. And, he used to liken his group to what a larger company might do. For instance, a company will invest in a supply chain. Well, for him, the supply chain was taking the source data and moving it into the data warehouse. The manufacturing was, taking the data in the warehouse and developing it into reports and analyses. The sales was tracking report usage, and he was very religious about doing that. And then his marketing department was customer support. And he was really innovative in that area. He actually bought a CRM tool and gave that to each of his team members on the BI team and had them track their interactions with their customers so that they knew exactly how many times they were touched, when they were touched, what was talked about, and when they need to be touched again to provide adequate support. So think of your data team as a business, and I think you'll be well on your way to a data strategy. So I'll open it up to you, Laura and Rana, and see if you have any comments on any of those things. Anything strike your fancy?
Actually, in the previous slide, it really dawned on me is how interesting. I think that you have 4 different pillars or different circles there. I mean, you have to be able to have on anything you do, especially in technology, right? Or data, strategy, program, and culture. And in operations, the big difference is just the skill sets that you need on the pipelines to be working on. But in general, this is kind of like common sense.
Yeah.
How to end up doing it. I mean, I was just looking at like, okay, my God, if you just take the operations and flip it up around and I say product management or something, it's going to end up being the same thing and repetitive. So really interesting. And I really agree. I think really setting up the target operating model, I have noticed, and one of my 2 jobs it has been extremely important between that and the operational side.
I like the analogy on your next slide from Rich. I think that's very effective. But on this slide, Wayne, we have chosen from the strategy slice of the pie the word roadmap to discuss our strategy. We felt that word roadmap lets people know that we're going towards action. We're actually doing something. This is not going to be a report that sits on the shelf and says nice things, but is not actionable. So we always like to use that word roadmap because it implies action. And I've been at Northeastern for about 8 years now. And before I got here, there was a consultant hired to do the data strategy. And that's what actually happened to that report. It just sat on a shelf. It had gathered dust and nobody did anything. So when I got here, my boss at the time says, Ronnie, you should really read that report. And maybe you can tell me why nobody ever did anything with it. And the report was good. It recognized what our pain points were around data and analytics. And there was some good advice in there. But I don't think it was ever assigned to anybody to implement anything. So there was this sort of diffuse sense of responsibility and nothing actually happened. And there was also a feeling that the strategy didn't take into account what Northeastern's culture is. So that gets to the culture part of your pie there, Wayne. So this was our first step towards an analytics strategy, or what I'm calling the roadmap, but it just didn't go anywhere. So perhaps it was more of an example of what not to do than what to actually do. So then just after I started, our IT organization did their own strategic plan, and they had, 1 paragraph, 1 piece of the strategy related to data and analytics. So again, my manager said, Ronnie, you should look at this and you should act on it or do something or get involved and insinuate yourself into that. But the plan that I saw, it was kind of highly operational. So I had one plan from a few years before that was really just too high level and too vision heavy. And then another plan that was too operational. So yeah, sounds like, what's the fairy tale? The 3 bears? We needed something in the middle that was just right. So to get something on the table that was more practical than the older strategy and yet a little more vision and staying power than the second one from IT, which seemed too operational, we underwent a big project to create our own analytics strategy. And that's where our roadmap came from. And I do feel like it was a good combination of vision with concrete steps and projects that we could implement, including an actual proof of concept to show senior leadership, like there's something that'll come out of this when we spend all this money and do all this stuff. So, as we'll discuss later, we do reevaluate, and refresh every so often. So even though you do all this great stuff and you come out with a roadmap that actually takes action, you do have to keep looking at it because things change. But I feel like those 2 false starts, they really did help us zero in on what we really needed. So all of this on this slide really resonates very well.
But one thing is, it depends where you are, like when you start, right? Like for you, you had the vision kind of, but then the other pieces are missing. And then we will go to it and how you go, how do you implement, right, your strategy. But it depends on the situation of the organization, of the company where you are, which pieces of the puzzle that are already formed and which ones are less formed. And depending on that is how you can start addressing or putting these pieces of the puzzle together. I really like that slide for that reason, because then you figure it out. Okay, this is where I am in the journey, especially if you are new in the position you are, or want to move forward, and this is a new assignment. If you cannot just high level take a look at about these pieces, and you say, okay, I have these, but then these are the other pieces of the puzzle that I'm missing. And for me, it has been different situations on each one of all of those. I wish I had this slide probably. Thank you.
That's a really good point, Laura. Well said.
So we have a few questions here from the audience. One is there a difference between data strategy and data strategic plan? I would think the data strategy itself should be a short, succinct statement inspired by what Walmart used as a business strategy: everyday low prices. Yeah, that's kind of like a tagline, and that's probably not a bad idea to have a tagline for your data program. Any thoughts? Do you guys have a tagline for your data program?
Actually,
I don't, but I want one.
That's a good idea.
We've encouraged clients to create a visual version of their strategy that they could put on a poster. That's really challenging to do, however.
Yeah,
But if you can't boil it down into something that people can absorb quickly, it's going to go right over their head, right?
Yeah, because I think honestly, we have a data strategy. It has so many factors on it. It can be probably your vision. I think what they were talking is your vision is you want to make it an everyday. So that's kind of the dream. But then put it in a kind of like branding it or having a logo or a tagline, it just makes it more catchy. You tend to remember really what the purpose is.
All right, so I'm going to call you guys in 3 months and find out what your taglines are.
Oh yes, please do. Actually, I'm going to do that. That's a really great idea.
And to Rana's point, I never thought about the fact that no one would be assigned to execute the data strategy. That actually is a symptom of a problem that a data strategy is designed to remedy, right? That you don't have consolidated leadership. Because if you had a chief data officer,
right,
it would be pretty obvious who was in charge of this.
And at the time we didn't.
Yeah. And I have one more.
At the time we didn't, so that was a problem.
Which of these components is the most challenging in your experience to do right?
It depends.
That's a good question.
It depends on the situation.
Like where you started, as you said.
Yeah. Well, I think, for example, if the function, you have kind of the vision, you have your roadmap. Yeah, you might have your, but then I think the program and the operating model are very interrelated, because the program is what is the structure it is going to have, roles and responsibilities, blah, blah, blah. And then the people, the operational is kind of the people on the other side that are going to be executing the different things. If you have the target operating model is not set up, then we end up like Rana and I had that issue too, that you had the strategy, but then you don't have the program, how you're going to run it. And then you might have the operations might be distributed. So to me, it's just a combination of things. Because you can have the setup of the structure, but you might not have, you don't know where you're going. So I think it's a hard one. I don't know, Rana, what do you think?
People always say that culture is the hardest thing. What's that famous quote? Culture eats strategy for lunch or breakfast. But I think it's not necessarily that it's so hard, but it takes the longest, right? People don't change overnight. And so if you're trying to make change, that just takes time. So maybe that's the one I would say that will take you the most time and concerted effort over a long period of time. But the one I'm actually, having the most fun with is the operating model piece. And just a little plug for Wayne here. He has written several articles and really helpful things on operating models, and I've used a lot of that to describe our operating model, and also having a ton of fun defining what a data and analytics franchise is in our context at Northeastern.
Yeah.
So that one I think is something that maybe that whole operating model piece is something that we all kind of know, but haven't necessarily articulated. And just getting it down on paper, how do we operate here? And is it right for us? And figuring that out is a very worthwhile exercise. And I've really enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, the last 3 or 4 clients we've done a data strategy for, the operating model was probably the most prominent thing we had to work on because it was broken or it needed to change and evolve with the business. So a couple of comments and questions, and then we'll move on to the next section. Does this diagram, I assume the one we're looking at, present the components of a data strategy or a complete data management framework? Well, it's designed to, at least I intended it to be components of a data strategy, but could it be a data management framework? Yes, absolutely. In fact, that's what a data strategy is how to harness how to harness data for business good, right? So yes, the data strategy is designed to help your data management. And then the follow-on question, vision should come from business, I thought, and data strategy is how data can be used to help achieve the vision. Yeah, absolutely agree to that. That is part of the challenge of creating the data strategy is you got to start with the business strategy because the data strategy better support that or else you're in a lot of trouble. And then a question for you, Rana. How were the individual faculties motivated to come together for everyone's benefit? Oh, that you must work in higher ed.
Yes.
Alongside research, student services, et cetera, who was the main driver supporter of the strategy? Was it you or did it go as high as the president? Ooh, good question.
So it actually came from our provost, who, if for those of you not in higher ed, you may recall from college that you had a thing called a provost, but probably have no idea what that person does. The provost is basically the chief academic officer, and I would translate that in industry as the chief operating officer. Runs the academic part of the house. Usually all the deans report to the provost, they have budgetary authority, things like that. So they're kind of behind the scenes-y, making everything run like a COO. And so when I got to Northeastern 8 years ago, that provost was very interested in using data and analytics more effectively. And so was really helpful in setting the tone and getting people to participate and getting other leaders to participate in our setting of the vision, which, as somebody just noted, needs to come from leaders and what are their goals and visions for their units, and kind of put all that together at the university level. So yeah, it was definitely driven from the top, which was really, really helpful. So I wasn't screaming into the wind. I had some support. And the faculty, they kind of get involved in terms of the ones who are in leadership positions. In higher ed, faculty, teach and do research, and they advise students and all the other things that they do. But then there are a few of them that move into leadership positions, either at the college or department level, or even at the university level, becoming vice provosts and things like that. So it was kind of at that level, that administrative level, those vice provosts and those deans who got involved. And every university is different. Some universities are really bottom up, and the leadership can't do anything unless all the faculty agree on things, which is, very, very much the shared governance model. But Northeastern tends to be a little bit more top down than that. So the faculty who are at the top could bring the rest of the faculty along. That was my finding, which was very different than the place I used to work. They'll remain nameless.
Very good. All right. Well, let's move on and talk about why you need a data strategy. I have a few slides here. So, we've done a lot of these types of projects, and usually there's one of three things that basically cause people to reach out. One is, and these are all related, by the way, get out of a quagmire. They're just feeling a lot of data pain, right? They just can't get the data into the user's hands in a manner that the users trust what they're getting, or in a timely manner. So data silos, data bottlenecks, data inconsistency, poor data quality, low adoption is just a quagmire. The second is, well, the future state, right? Well, if we just move everything to the cloud and get brand new shiny tools, then we'll get out of that quagmire, but we'll also improve performance, reduce overhead costs, address technical debt, prioritize data initiatives. And it's been fun being in tech because really every 10 years we reinvent our infrastructure on which we do compute, right? And data. And every time the infrastructure has a paradigm shift, everything on top, including data analytics, has to shift. So we're now coming to the end of this paradigm shift to the cloud, and most people have moved or on their way or have decided to be hybrid. And the last thing that we see drive to data strategy is genuinely want to better serve the business, align with strategic initiatives, increase agility, reduce risk, improve customer satisfaction. Obviously, if you can't show how you're doing any or all of those things, you probably won't have a budget or a job before long, right? So these are the three motivators I see. I'd love to hear if there's others out there. So put your notes in the comments. More specifically, who's driving or what's driving the data strategy initiative? It could be a new CEO or CIO or vice provost, as Rana was saying. Could be a new strategic initiative like business transformation or digital transformation. It could be, as we just said, the need to modernize the architecture. There might be a disagreement about that architecture. Maybe we should do data services, maybe not. Or there may be a disagreement about who owns what in the data franchise. Or, you have a data strategy, but you're confident in it, or someone's questioning you and you need some outside validation. As Rana was saying, a lot of people do have data strategies either created internally or externally, but they're not actionable. Or there's no one to execute them. And then there's always political issues or CYA issues, right? It's kind of the underbelly of data strategy sometimes. Two more slides. But, what I've discovered is that a data strategy is more than just a document. It's really a communications vehicle. It's a way to communicate with different parts of your organization, communicate with the executives, to show them how data helps their business and helps them achieve their objectives by which they're being measured. It also is important to get their buy-in and secure funding. It's important to communicate laterally with department heads. That's where a lot of the activity goes on, right? Show how data supports their area, what you will be doing for them in the next 2 or 3 years or not, and get their buy-in. And, that's really important because these folks, can put brakes into your whole plan if they're not on your side. And finally, it's really important, a data strategy, to communicate with your team, get everyone on the same page, get them with the same vision, the same mission, the same blueprint. Because once everyone starts marching in the same direction, you can make a lot of progress very quickly. Okay, I promise, last slide now. When do you refresh your strategy? It's always a good idea to do at least annually. Hopefully, I would expect that your bosses or the bosses of the CDO are asking for an annual presentation of the strategy and budget to get reviewed and approved. And that's always a good time to update what you're doing and why you're doing it. Certainly after a major change, like a merger or acquisition, a new executive comes in, there's a new corporate strategy because of the executive, or as I was saying, there's been a major technology paradigm shift. All those things would maybe motivate you to refresh your strategy, even perhaps more than on an annual basis. So with that, let me open up to Laura and Rana to see if you have any thoughts about anything I said, or maybe answer the question, like how often do you refresh your strategy, for instance?
Well, do you want to go first, Rana, or do you want me to go?
Oh, go ahead, Laura.
Okay, thank you. So for us, I have found, every year you have to be doing refresh your annual budget and prepare for the new fiscal years, right? And usually I try to plan, make estimates for further years along, but that's an opportunity to really check really what is coming and then ensure that checking out what is new in the market, et cetera, that you can incorporate to move forward. Obviously, when I joined and my previous positions, I did one of those, but also to keep it up to date, we are going through it really annually, or if there are major developments, we started doing it in a shorter periods of time. With the inclusion of AI, how cannot we afford to have a strategy? Because then it becomes much more complicated. So that's kind of what we're doing it right now. Obviously, I'm going to have a new person joining soon that is going to be heading data, and I'm sure he's going to come and do his refresh again. But at least for sure, once a year.
Any thoughts, Rana?
As far as this slide goes, we do refresh our strategy annually. You've seen us do this many times, Wayne. You've helped us to refresh our strategy. We do have to do an annual presentation to our executive group, and we do have to ask for money to do new things every year. Sometimes we get it, sometimes we don't. I think one of our biggest strategy refreshes was during the pandemic, because we had funding and then it got pulled back. Because you remember the economy was so uncertain, like, are any students going to come back to school, or are they all going to stay home? Like, we had no idea what was going on. So that was a big refresh for us. We really had to rethink our whole budget. So that was, big refresh right there. And, an interesting part of this whole idea about why do you need a data strategy, maybe next time, Wayne, we'll do a poll on whether or not people think that you need to do a data strategy, or why. Because sometimes you think, oh, yeah, of course I need one. It's just duh, why wouldn't you? But that's actually the wrong way to think about it. You really do need to enumerate your reasons for why you're doing it, because at least the way we did it, and I'm sure most people do it this way, you need input from your leaders around the campus, and not even just your leaders, your data analysts, your data scientists. You need to ask them to participate in the formation of your data strategy. So unless you enumerate why, they're not going to want to get on board and give their time. They're all really super busy people. So we have to give them a reason to participate. And for us, a lot of those reasons are the ones Wayne stated. Those are, mom and apple pie, just to get everybody on the same page and talking the same language, having a common language around data. It's the foundation of data literacy. We have a data literacy program. You need to have that common vocabulary. We've got people talking about mode 1 and mode 2 reporting for years now. I never thought I'd see it, but people grab onto those things and they remember them. So it's really great to have those concepts that you share around this kind of a process. And for us, one of the reasons why we needed a roadmap was because, I know people don't know a lot about higher education accounting, but the way it works at Northeastern is that all the colleges and the administrative units, they're all separate and they have their own budgets. And some colleges, just by the nature of what they teach, have more students and more money from research than other colleges. You can imagine who that might be. So they could spend more money on tools for their analysts. And we have a lot of distributed analysts. They're all over the university. But then other analysts would be using free, lousy, open source stuff. I don't mean to imply that all open source stuff is lousy. It's not true. But, there was a difference. And we wanted to make sure that our data strategy would kind of level the playing field and get everybody into some tooling that was more equivalent across the university. And so, that was a big reason to do it. Mm-hmm. We just wanted to have a strategy that people could rally behind, that would seem appropriate to people for our current level of data maturity at whatever point in time that was over the years.
Great. So we have a lot of questions and comments. So let me go through these quickly. Can you please share examples of data strategy created for some industry, say CPG? Oh, well, we'll get to that soon enough. Just hold on there, Chris. Oh, gotta get my cursor in the right place. What is the next paradigm shift? Is it AI? Yeah, I think, Laura, you're fast on the Gen AI.
So,
right?
Yeah, let me just rewind a little, because I think, at the end of the day, the reason that we really need a strategy is because there is a goal for the organization or the company you work for, either to scale up, more revenue, create products, be more efficient, and you have to use data to go at it. You can go in the hard way or the more holistic way. And I think that's the reason you need a strategy. But just let me take you to the question you asked. I think the next layer, the complexity that is coming in is AI. And then now really it's becoming so tangible to really not only do a structured data, but unstructured data and kind of mix it around. To me, the next challenge is really unstructured data management. Because I think so we have a lot of at least foundations, a lot of technologies to be able to do access controls on and architecture, etc. I mean, all those definitions that you have for a target operating model. But then when you start doing unstructured data, instead you start going really to documents and fields, and you start adding AI on top of that, it's just complicated. So to me, that's really pushing the envelope to a next layer. And that to me, privacy is and confidentiality on unstructured data using AI is going to be interesting to see, and I'm looking forward. But I think to me that's the next layer.
Great. Yeah, there are a lot of risks in that layer too, as you and I have discussed in the past. Another question here: in your experience, is the data strategy specific for data analytics and decision making? Or part of the strategy can also cover data for integration between systems?
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm gonna give a quick shot. I would say that traditionally a warehouse has been the way to integrate an organization, especially after a merger and acquisition. So it does integrate the data, but really just for reporting and analysis.
Exactly.
But Laura, I know you've had some experience creating a data hub, so you probably have some other thoughts.
Yeah. So this is in the companies I've been into. We start with the little ODS. They end up being the repository for integrations, but then it becomes being the data warehouse. And I think it's important to separate them because even just the service levels agreements are different. Issues like when you're doing the management and the governance of the data, that become as an issue some of the things that you need to consider for integrations. And then you might need to create a master hub. But I think that the purpose is different. So you might need to really kind of keep it a little separate. They have a lot of synergies, and the fact that you have potentially some master data, if you have it. But the purposes are different, and the service levels agreements for both are very different.
Yeah. I always thought application integration was the flip side of data integration, right? You're still collecting and kind of can consolidate data in an application integration environment. And that could be your warehouse if you really wanted it to be.
Yeah, but I think that's dangerous due to the warehouse.
Yeah.
It's dangerous. You have to do that's another part of your architecture from an integrations perspective. Is drops depending. It's a different beast. Not for story short.
Okay, there's
in my humble opinion.
Yeah. All right, so let's keep moving on. There's a lot more questions, but why don't we just finish up our third section here, and then we can reserve the remaining time for questions and comments. So how do you implement the data strategy? So let me just show you some artifacts from some data strategies that we've done. In any data strategy, there's usually a current state assessment. Where are you today? Because if you don't know where you are today, it's going to be hard to figure out how to get to where you want to go, right? So there's a very simplified version of an assessment with letter grade reporting on 4 components of a data estate, right? The data and governance foundation, reporting, analysis, and prediction. Usually have like half a dozen or so charts that map that current state. And then, your future state is represented usually in these like 5 to 8 recommendations. We tend to call them swim lanes. They get you from the current state to a future state. And each of those recommendations has initiatives associated with them. And as you drill down, each initiative has, multiple tasks. And when you roll it all together, you tend to get the roadmap, right? So this is kind of a depiction of all those tasks rolled up into those swim lanes. I don't think this is the same project, by the way, with a budget determined from the resources or the tools that are required for each swim lane to get you where you want to go. So this would be a high-level roadmap and budget. In this case, this is a 4-year roadmap. We usually do 3-year roadmaps. And then probably the most important part, this might be this slide might be the culmination of 60 or 70 slides in a PowerPoint deck. And then what we usually find is that we got to stand back and say, okay, well, now we got to sell this to executives and we got to put it in executive speak. So we usually boil those 60 or 70 slides down into like 8 or 10. And typically the last slide is, the ask, right? You're not going to get anything unless you ask for it. So, this is kind of summarizing everything. Where are we today? Where do we want to go? What do we need to get there? And usually there's some component in here of where the competitors are, right? That usually perks the ears up of executives quite a bit. So those are some of the components of an actual, physical, tangible data strategy. Just a handful of components. I just want to give you a sampling of what you might create if you undertake a data strategy. Any thoughts or comments, Rana or Laura? I'll check questions as we go.
What I was thinking is something that has been really powerful is when you show first the state of affairs in a big slide and you get people scared, especially executives, then they are more sympathetic to go to the next one. You gain a lot of it because, obviously this is going to cost money. But if we want to get to the goal that we want to accomplish and the vision we want to do, these are the things that you have to have in place. I think to me, having the budget amounts, obviously having the roadmap, this is kind of where we're going. This is where we are. This is where we're going. And these are the steps that we can take. But by the way, in order for me to get there, this is how much I need, and I need your support. Is extremely crucial because then from that, depending on how much you get, then you start really prioritizing how you're going to go at it on implementation. But these are really critical factors, these 3.
So the slide before this is one that we've used a lot and one that our executives do key in on because we're telling them what we're going to do and how much it's going to cost them. So that's been a really key part of our roadmap and budget presentations over the years. But one of the lessons that we've learned is that these projects aren't necessarily the most sexy, but they are expensive. So it's really, it's up to you to convince your senior leadership to spend the money that it takes to get these things done. And you're going to be competing against things, at least in higher ed, like building a new building or a new dorm or, whatever it is. So, I think that over the years, though, senior leaders have realized how much of an importance this has on the bottom line of the university and achieving our goals. So maybe sometimes they think, oh, we need this more than we need a new building. So that could be a surprising thing to find, but one that's really encouraging. Another thing that we've done to sell our roadmaps is to do a real world project, a proof of concept. That's really been helpful in selling our roadmap and getting the money we need. And then certainly employing somebody like Wayne and his team has been really helpful. They lend us, they give us gravitas and authority and that outside perspective. And so if you have a little money to spend, it's really totally worth it to get somebody like Wayne and his team involved. I think that these are all visuals and helpful paradigms that we've used with great success.
And just be noted, I did not ask Rana to give me a plug, but I appreciate it. All right, a lot of questions and comments. We've got about 10 minutes left, so we're right on time. So great question from the chat that Jay pulled over for us. If you were walking into a new company, I guess we're all going to put our consulting hat on, right? That didn't have a data strategy and wasn't all that data savvy, what are the most vital data strategy areas to target first, and what should you be especially careful of? Oh, that's a good one.
Well, I will hire a consultant to do a data strategy.
That's a big question.
I need to go fast, man. This is when you get in a position like that, it's like, and especially you aren't being in charge of that. you need help fast enough, and you can do it depending how you do the again, but you can do it fast. That's the only thing I'll say. That was me. That was if I will do, because I've done it twice and I had to go, but
Yeah,
results.
these only take 8 to 12 weeks to do. And the first thing we do is interview all the key stakeholders to really understand what it is you should be focusing on first.
Yeah, that's what we did as well, Wayne. It took like 3 months, and yeah, it worked out really well. I learned so much. All of us did. Whether it was my partners in IT or myself and my team, I mean, we just learned a lot. And so it was very helpful to have a consulting project. Now, not everybody has the money to do it, so it can be hard.
Okay, another question. We kind of touched on this. How do you sell the idea of a data strategy? Because in most places, you jump directly into architecture from vision. Yes, that's what I think most people do. Maybe they think the strategy is the vision and then they just want to build it, right?
Yeah.
In fact, we're doing that. We kind of got sucked into that right now. But how do you get people to slow down and just take a step back and say, before you dive in, it's really important to think through where you're diving and come up with a plan.
And if you are the leader of the role of data or CIO, either one, you need to because if you have the holistic view, you need to understand what are really the major pain points, because out of that, you might come to the conclusion that is beyond a technical solution, an architecture solution. Usually is bigger than that. If things are not talking to each other, or you don't have all the information together, there are a lot of silos, the infrastructure is pretty slow, or you don't have the right talent, or you don't have a person in charge. So it's depending on the the pain points. I think you have to do some root cause analysis yourself a little bit, and then from that you can determine if you really need it, because otherwise you are just going to solve without having all the ingredients.
Agreed. And I think that in those pain points, there are pain points that are not necessarily just architecture related. They are organization related or data literacy related. So if you do a good job of collecting those pain points that Laura just talked about, then you're going to see that it's more than just architecture.
Yeah, I would say in our experience, 9 out of 10 times, it's not the technology or the architecture that's the challenge. It's the people, process, and governance. Those are the hardest things to really get right, because it's people, and people are hard, It's a lot easier to implement a tool than a person. So, okay, another question. What specific resources do you recommend for thinking through or estimating costs?
Well, you can get help from your vendors. If you're not out looking for new vendors, your vendors can talk to you about what your costs are going to be. But I think that there's a lot of help out there. There are consultancies, right? We've already plugged Wayne, but there's a lot of resources on the web about, substitution, maybe. Like if you don't do this, then you're going to end up with this kind of cost. But if you do this, your cost will be this. You have to figure out what's reliable, but you can certainly get help from experts. You can get help from your IT organization. If you're not in IT, they're a great resource. I'm in higher ed. We're very collegial. I could just call somebody up at Brandeis, Harvard, wherever, and say, what did you do? And how much did it cost you? And what were the benefits? And, we share a lot of information. You may not be in an industry that does that, but I would say also just use your peers as much as you can.
Yeah, I agree. And another thing, if we are talking about costs of doing a strategy or cost of implementation of a strategy, on doing the strategy, there are a lot of companies doing a lot of things that you can see prices varying, like from really high to low. I really tend to go more on the boutique firms because they are more focused, and then probably pricing can be different. And like I use Wayne in my previous job. So, but also to the upkeep, and again, actually benchmarking with IT is helpful, because I get to see from my other projects really how much it's costing me. So you get a perspective. you can see really if you want to staff people. You also can see online. There are some books related about the rates, salaries of the different skill sets. I mean, you have to do a lot of homework.
Here's a very interesting question. Do you think there is a future where co-pilots, Gen AI co-pilots, will automate the observability of the execution of your data strategy?
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Let me write that down.
Automate the observability of what?
Well, in other words, can you have an AI tool monitor how successful you are in achieving your data strategy?
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, that's an
I mean,
interesting.
you get to compare
I don't
with that. That's a very interesting. I just wrote it down.
That's a good question.
Yeah, I didn't think.
I don't know, Wayne. What do you think?
I'm just thinking, well, yeah, that is a tough one. Obviously, if you have success metrics for your data strategy, those I don't think you need a Gen AI tool to monitor those. Maybe if it's the broad-based metrics, more like a balanced scorecard, there might be a role for that. But I think it's hard enough to quantify the value of data and data initiatives as it is. Adding a Gen AI, and it's not because there's just too much data or too many data points to sift through and find the patterns. I just think it's hard to justify the impact of data on business strategy. So I think I'm a little bit skeptical of that one. All right, we got just one. We'll have time for one more question. Oh gosh, okay, here's a good one. Chris this is Chris. Yeah, he's asked a lot of good questions here. How do you go about promoting data culture?
That's a really good one.
Yeah, we started a data literacy program at Northeastern, and we do workshops and we have resources, and we have a whole strategy just around data literacy. And it's been really fun. We have a great head of data literacy. She used to actually teach data and analytics at Northeastern. So we got really lucky to get a former faculty member. So yeah, I think you really have to be intentional about it. And do a data maturity assessment or a data literacy assessment. Data maturity being the organization, and data literacy being each individual person, and figure out what personas do you have? Are they sort of data minimalists that don't really like data, and you could have some kind of workshop for that kind of person, or are they really data consumers? I mean, there's all sorts of different data personas. So I think you have to assess that and take it from there.
Oh, that's good. I might need to talk to her. Can you let me?
Oh,
that's good one. No, just talk to her, like, to understand how you guys did it. When we in my previous role here, I've been here a year, so we are in the process of doing that. I'm working closely with another group on that part of it. They are owning it. But at IDB Invest, we started using kind of gamification for that, and that was very interesting because we started giving kind of prizes for the people that accomplish more points. We were just trying to make it a little fun. And there was a lot of, yes, we do the plan of the training people and everything. And also what we did is having this tool that was built, we were prototyping it, and then we ended up buying licenses, where you have a lot of content about data related, like it can be podcast, it can be research, etc., and also training. But then also, the more you can be competing against your peers to see who will get more points, the more things you did. And we had to end up, and then we had our panel, like, you had your dashboard, who are the ones that are winning, and we ended up giving prizes to it. So it made it a little fun. So I left before we kind of did it kind of enterprise-wide, but that was a really interesting idea. Kind of using both concepts. There are some people that are really like to compete, and other ones that like to do research, but there are some more quiet. But I actually, the reason that I wanted to talk to your person is because I'm very curious about how you were able to do the assessment of the data literacy and your employees. I think that is very interesting. So I will reach out to you.
Yeah, so I'll just add one thought and then we'll close this out, which is, I think the quickest way, well, I love the gamification, and the data literacy is absolutely necessary. But to really create a data culture, it starts at the top, right? When your executives are measuring business performance using metrics and data, everyone has to follow suit. When they ask a question about a report that they've been given, you better know the data behind that report. And it just all trickles down, right? So if they have a balanced scorecard they're running the business by, everyone's going to have to get data literate very quickly. So that's what I find the most, the organizations with the best data cultures.
Interesting. That's good. That's good to know.
Good point.
So we're, as Laura said, we're a boutique consulting firm. All of us have gray hair or no hair. Trying to get a female in there. We've had a lot of different clients over the years. And thank you to our guest speakers and panelists, Laura and Rana. This has been so much fun. And thank you to our audience for your great comments and questions.
Thank you. It was really fun. Thank you for having us. Nice to meet you.
Thanks for having me, Wayne.